Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rooted in Greatness. You guys know this Rooted in Greatness series. We're launching this year just for you, for every athlete out there, every mental performance coach out there, every neuroscience student that's out there. I want you to be able to come here so you can learn. Not just learn, but you can grow your capacity. We're going to talk about neuroscience and the intersection of faith and neuroscience and how it impacts athletics and their mental well being. You know, I'm not one of those guys who promote mental toughness, but I do promote mental wholeness, that we can work and fire off in a holistic way and grow our capacity and strengthen ourselves through biblical principles. Today, I have an amazing guest with me, man. As you can see here, I got Dr. Zach Yanis here with me today, and I'm super excited to get to know him and for you guys to get to know and find out a little bit more about him. Dr. Zach, how we doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Tariq, I'm doing great. I'm so excited you brought me on. Appreciate that, man. The opportunity and just looking forward to the conversation. Man, I think there's a lot of great stuff to talk about here.
Well, I appreciate it, man. So let's start off here. I want the audience to find out a little bit about you. So,
Sure.
tell me a little bit about you, your background, what you're doing now, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I'm a neuropsychologist by trade, which means I specialize in the brain and how the brain functions, different parts of it. My particular expertise, area specialty was in brain injuries. And so knowing how the brain is supposed to work normally, that way when somebody has something happen to their brain, whether it's a car accident, a fall, everything from gunshot wounds to even as we age, dementias, whenever the brain's not working properly, going
Mhm.
to evaluate and say, hey, here's what's off, here's why, here's what's going to lead to the trouble you're probably having or you're going to be having. And then here's some ways that we can try to help make life easier for you in doing that. Um, Now, how I got to where I'm doing now, which is doing performance coaching for athletes, coaches, and then also on the corporate side with business leaders and board members and national boards, is I realized the concepts we were using to help people rehab from brain injury to
Mhm.
get better, to regain their abilities, things as minor as how to tie their shoes again, to how to walk, to how to drive a car, to how to go back to work or school.
Mhm.
What if we used those same concepts with individuals who didn't have a brain injury, right?
Wow.
But are trying to maximize their performance physically, emotionally, cognitively in the sports world and in the corporate world? And when I looked across the arena of the field, I realized there's a shortage of that work being done. So I decided, I'm going to take those principles I learned, things like neuroplasticity, mirror neurons, um, and apply those things to individuals who are trying to be the best that they can be in their respective discipline. Um, and that's important to me. And I promise I'll close this up here on introduction. Is
Yeah.
uh, what you may learn about me is growing up. I grew up in a not great neighborhood, not great area, and because of sports kind of, I know it's cliches, it sounds, really saved me and got me out of a situation, took me to college. I didn't know you could go to college for running. I was a runner,
Oh, you're
right?
a runner. Okay.
Yeah. So NCAA D1 athlete. And so I didn't even know you could go to college for running. So went to college as far away as I could in Nashville, Tennessee. And because of that, the world was opened up to me and opportunities that I didn't even know existed were shown
Wow.
to me. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have my faith. I wouldn't have my wife. I wouldn't have my children. I wouldn't have my career. I wouldn't have this life that I've been blessed to live. And so my goal is, not everybody has my story. Some had it worse, some had it better. But I know if I can help people do better than they ever thought possible in whatever it is that they're pursuing, there are going to be opportunities to open up for them that they're not even realizing yet. And that's the only way I could feel to give back to and be a good steward of the gifts that God has given me, is to do that.
I love that, Dr. Zach. You and I share the same sentiment. Sports saved my life. But vice versa. The flip for me was I had a creative gift that I fell in love with more than football. When I played football, I did track through the discus, did very well throwing the discus, but I didn't know you could go to college for singing.
Yeah,
And I went to school on a scholarship to sing
no kidding.
and gave up sports. And so, but I love sports, so I didn't want to let it go. That's how I segued and got into personal training because I still worked out, still went to the gym, still kept my regiments, and that drove me into staying connected to the work. But my singing unlocked creativity and imagination. You know how well music affects you and your brain. And
Absolutely,
so
man.
I lived in that world to understand a lot of music theory,
Mm,
and that created, man, some pathways for me that made me think deeper. And so I absolutely love one that you shared, that you found your faith, because I found football, I found faith, and I found honestly family in
yeah.
all of those things that we did that I did growing up. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, absolutely,
Now,
man.
go ahead.
I said appreciate you sharing your story as well. You found the three F's of football, family, and faith.
Yeah,
And
man.
we'll talk more about things, but it's just kind of looping back around to the music. I mean, music is such a phenomenal art, and it does incredible things for the brain and our ability to manage, trials and tribulations and everything else. But I mean, you'll have patients who have brain injuries or strokes who aren't able to talk, but if you play a song, they can sing it, right?
Yeah.
And the powerful things that music therapy can do. So, man, I can imagine the impact that it had on your life and your journey as well.
Yeah, Dr. Zach, I want to kind of shine a light on this. You talked about having a rough childhood. I had a very rough childhood as well, and I can't tell you when I say music and football saved my life.
Yeah,
I can name you several occurrences just in my life where things were really bad, and music was always that thing when the noise was going on in life. I could put on a song that would actually take me out of the noise. Or I was just sharing with somebody, or I would write the lyrics to songs, and the
yeah,
lyrics would come alive for me and become my reality more than the life that I was living. And so when we get into this conversation and start talking about neuropsychology and neuroscience, I know for me, I discovered neuroscience before I knew what
what
neuroscience was,
neuroscience was. Yeah,
right? And the more I started to get into work, like I told you, into massage and all these things, then I started finding out these terminologies and was like, oh, what? That's what that is. Oh, I love this. I want to ask you, start off by just starting with this question. What originally drew you into neuroscience, and when did you realize that faith and brain science could work together?
so yeah. So when I came into college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Again, college was foreign to me. Most of my family, didn't graduate high school, more or less, go to college.
Hmm.
So when I went there as a freshman, I saw everybody filling out, we had orientation to major, and so I just put psychology and philosophy. I had no idea what I was signing up for. You know, I knew I didn't want to do a lot of math, and that seemed like that would avoid a lot of math. But through that, I happened upon two incredible professors who became mentors of mine. One in neuropsychology, one in philosophy. Dr. Dale Alden, a neuropsychologist, and Dr. Bill Collins, a philosopher. I fell in love with the brain and philosophy at the same time. I fell in love once I realized that the brain is responsible for every single thing that we do. And I started to learn about myself and the things that I've been through. And kind of like you said, it kind of gave me a language for my experiences.
Yeah.
Right. And then I realized, hey, now that I know my experiences, it gave me a tool for improving them. So when it came down to it, I had a decision to make: pursue philosophy or pursue neuropsychology, neuroscience. And being a young man at the time who was, about to get married or anything, I thought, well, neuropsychology would probably be more lucrative. So we'll go that route. And so I did. Went through grad school, got my doctorate and everything, and ended up at doing brain injury rehabilitation at a brain spinal cord injury hospital in Atlanta. And the more I saw brain work, the more I realized, like, it kind of goes back to that teleological argument with Paley and the clock and the watchmaker, that this can't be by accident, man. It's got to be by design.
Yeah.
Right, just the complexity of the brain, the complexity of us as a human species, but the complexity of it. For me, outside of the universe itself, it's the most complex thing in the universe. Just so I'll tell you this, and I promise I won't linger too long on this particular topic, but, and you may know this, but just the brain, about 3.5 pounds or so. How many brain cells make up the human brain? How many neurons? Neurons is a fancy term for it.
How many neurons make up the brain cell? I would say, whoo, oh, I'm
I didn't mean to put
like
you on the spot.
my mouth wants to say a trillion because I know how small neurons are.
Yep. So you're not.
But
Yeah. What is the other?
but I'm like, okay, that's like a little absurd. Maybe it's I gotta go into over 100 billion. I can't go less than 100 billion.
Look, hey, it's like we're on Price is Right, man. You go under, but so yeah, so 80 to 100 billion, right? 80 to 100 billion. But here's a cool thing, man. Here's a cool thing. Those 80 to 100 billion neurons or brain cells, right? They don't work in isolation. They
Right.
have to work together. They have to coordinate to do everything that we do, everything that we think, every memory that we have, everything that we smell, feel, touch, every dream, every movement, every interaction we have with somebody, right? They have to work together to carry that movement out. From things as simple as I need to write something down to, I need to make sure I pick up the outside linebacker as he comes in, on a blitz, right?
Right.
Um, they have to work together. So what they do is they form connections with each other. But one
Mm.
neuron isn't going to waste his time with just hooking up with one homie. Like one connection is going to be like, no, 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 hey, we're going to bring in a group. And so it forms connections with tens of thousands of other neurons. So you have 80 to 100 billion neurons forming thousands of connections each. And that's where we get into the trillions. There's hundreds of trillions of connections running through our brain. And we call these neural pathways. They're like these little highways. And those
Hmm.
highways, each one that we have is what helps us to do the things that we just talked about, everything that we do in life. And
Right.
so realizing just how complex that was, and when you see somebody who's had even a subtle brain injury and just the mass devastation that can cause in their life and their ability to do things, I was like, man, this can't be by accident. It has to be by design.
Mm. Mm.
What really sold it for me is, it took a while for me to latch onto my faith and be open minded about it, and to finally fall down on my knees, like, hey, you know what? Like, no, to get beyond the intellectual component of it, like
Right.
intellectually, I knew that there had to be a God and those kind of things, just sorting through
Mm.
that. But one verse really hit home for me was Matthew 7, and pretty common verse, part of Sermon on the Mount, but it says, ask and it will be given, right? To
Yes.
seek and you will find, knock and the door will
Knock
be
the door
opened.
and open. Yeah, I love that verse, man.
Yeah. And I thought, man, that speaks to our faithfulness, God's faithfulness to us, our posture of pursuit and believing in Him and His ability to take care of us and everything else. But I realized it paralleled this concept in neuroscience that we call neuroplasticity,
Plasticity. Mm-hmm.
you know, which is the brain's ability to physically change and rewire and adapt, right, with new experiences. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking about it, I was like, God gave us faith to have hope, to live boldly, to have bold expectations, right?
Yeah.
And the neuroscience and neuroplasticity is what gives us the mechanism to do that.
Yes. Yes.
So,
That Dr. Zach, that makes me think about there's a scripture that says faith is the substance
mm,
of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So when I studied that and I learned about neuroplasticity, I was like, wait a minute, faith is substance. And I had to chew on that for a minute and say, so this thing that the Lord's given us called faith, faith is substance of what you hope for.
mm,
And so I started to see the connection when you talk about the neurons and how they all fire off and work together. It started to teach me that words are not just words, but they're connected in our inner man. They are
yes,
they are identities, identifications in our inner place. So God gave us the opportunity to grab a hold of faith, right? So that you can ID internally what it is you want to see externally,
externally. Yes.
right?
God.
And what you just said about asking, seeking, and knocking, those are actual. One is the mouth asking. Seeking, to me, I always say, is the eye perspective, right?
Yes.
Perception. And then knocking is the action,
Action.
right? The external. So I'm like, whoa, God, there's no way you set all this up. Faith is asking, seeking, is the substance, right? No, hold on. Seeking is the hope, but substance is the knocking, is the external.
Yeah.
And I was like, hold on, man. So when you see this, how he set it up for programming, it takes you all the way back to the original programming that he did.
Right.
And the original programming he did was in Genesis. The very first thing that he spoke when he said that let us make man in our
Our
image
image.
and our likeness, right? Image and likeness, two powerful words. And then he said, and let them have dominion, which is dominion, translate the word dunamis, which means to
Right.
dominate. And then he says, be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, and have dominion. And I'm bringing all this up because it shows you how he did the neuro wiring for you in text. And if you would just align your thinking with the text, then you would see some outcomes that you wouldn't even believe.
That you didn't even think were possible.
That you would.
Right. That you didn't even see. That you didn't even think were possible. Right.
Exactly.
That are hidden from you. No, I love that. I love that. And it's, oh man, there's so many places to go with that. And so I completely agree. So like when I think of ask, right, I think that's intention, right? Right. It's an intentional. So when I work with people, it's like it's an intentional growth.
Yes.
Right? You have to have an intentional growth, and that comes from the hope that you have. What are you hoping to achieve? What are you hoping to become? Right. And then when I think of, seek, I think, oh, when we seek something, hey, that's the repetition. We got to seek these repetitive experiences. We got to seek and repeat the things that we tell ourselves our identity. The words become our identity.
That
Right? And
consistency.
the more,
Yeah.
yeah, the consistency. And the more we seek, the more we do that thing, right, that makes us uncomfortable, the thing that we were afraid to do, but it's in the way of our pursuit of our goal. Right? Then the more our brain changes and forms, and learns like, hey, this is okay for us. This doesn't need to be a threat or a fear. This is what we're called to do. And then the knock-in is the perseverance.
Wow. I
Right? And it
love
gives us
that.
that external, like you said, external action. Right?
Yeah.
Here's what we're going to do. And then we
Right.
persevere on it. When other people want to call it quits or give up.
Right.
And we talk so much now. Some of the hot topic words, one of which is resilience, right? Mental resilience. Um, and I love that you said, tying that back to like what you said about the words aren't just this abstract thing. They're not just these random kind of thoughts that go off into the
Right.
ether. No, they form our identity.
They are pictures, man.
Yeah, it tells us who we are. The words that we use, tells us what we can do, who we are. Uh, and when it comes to identity, and maybe we'll get into this, is that when your identity is set, knowing that what your value is, because we were
Right.
made in image and likeness
And likeness. Image and likeness.
and likeness, right? When your identity is already set, our brain no longer has to worry about the threat of failure, about the threat of evaluation, right? Or
That's
things that
good.
get in the way of people's performance. Our identity is set. Now that frees up the brain because when we feel our identity is under threat, our brain sends off this alarm. The amygdala it means almond because it looks like an almond, it's Greek for almond. And it's our threat center in our brain. And it kicks off this alarm and starts looking for things. It's one of its sole purposes is find a threat in our environment, whether it's real or perceived.
Right.
And that goes off
Right.
when our identity feels threatened. That goes off. And when that happens, the front part of our brain is responsible for our remembering who we are in our identity, being able to problem solve, to judge, to plan, to make good decisions, to focus, right? All those things start to shut down because amygdala pulls those resources.
Right.
So when you know what your identity is, you don't have to worry about that. And when your identity is in Christ, right, you no longer have to worry about that evaluation. And
I
so it
love
frees
that.
you up to pursue what's possible. I know that's long-winded. That's
No, it's
exactly
not. You're speaking my language. You're speaking my language, Doc. Because when I teach this and I'm working with my athletes and talk to them about how visualization helps you to rewire, right? I talk to them about the neural pathways, and those neural pathways you can cancel out, right? I tell them your brain doesn't know whether something is real or fake.
absolutely.
It doesn't know. And so if you perceive something that actually is not real, your brain calculates it as real.
Yes.
And I said, so the Bible talks to you about why you shouldn't joke. Why? Because whatever you're joking about, the way your brain creates is you laughing, but your brain is treating it like it's real because it doesn't
Happening.
distinguish between, right, it's happening. And so you setting things in motion in your brain and breaking sometimes cycles of consistency where your brain was believing in the best thing for you.
Yep.
And terms like that, I know people probably say, well, what kind of terms are that? There's this statement people use all the time. I was killing myself laughing.
Mm.
And you're like, wait a minute. What are you telling your brain? Oh, I was dying. Think about what so if your brain doesn't know whether whether that's real or not, you're teaching your body through the words that you're using. And the Bible says life and death is in the power of your tongue. So
Mm-hmm.
you're wiring your system to program you dying.
Mm.
And you and like you said, so are you seeking after that? Is that what you're doing? But we don't recognize, if you're not careful, you're not understanding that faith, I always say that you can do faith or you can do fear. You can do faith or you can do fear. What is fear? False evidence appearing real,
Gosh. Yep.
right? False evidence appearing real. So if you do fear, then your brain don't know you're doing fear. Your brain just like their brain like, okay, this is where we at. Let's go. I'm going down this road with you. Right? And so I say to people, look at what the authority that the Lord has given us and blessed us with to actually say, I'm not going down the fear road. I'm going to go over down the narrow road of faith, and I
Yeah.
can literally walk that road now by creating it with my words. So I love that we're talking about this. I want to you look like you got something to add. Go ahead, Doc.
Man, I got so many, again, so many areas. Yeah, it's just rich with content here for that you just and wisdom. So I guess I'll start with that. You're absolutely right that our brain, man, it's a brain is in- on one hand, it is incredibly complex and brilliant and just full of awe and wonder. On the other hand, it's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is what you come back to is our brain is terrible at differentiating between what is real and what is imagined, what is perceived, what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And so the things, our thoughts that we have, right? The experiences, the things we tell ourselves, if we aren't careful, if we don't correct it, right? And
Mm.
especially if it's in a negative and it's going against, our morals, our values, whatever the case may be, our goals, right? Like you said, it goes
Mhm.
against that consistency we've developed in whatever our pursuit is. Then what happens is it breaks that and it starts to change our identity because what
Mm.
we think or believe becomes what we feel, and what we feel becomes what we do, and what we do becomes who we are.
That's right. That's right. I
And
love
so
that.
I love that you said, if we visualize, so visualization is people sleep on that and they think it's just kind of like, like, God, what am I going to think happy thoughts for or whatever? It's like, no, that's not
Yeah.
what we're doing here.
That's not it.
No, what we're doing is we're creating or recreating a previous experience. So we do something at Neurosports here that we call Neuro Revisionist history.
Hmm.
And so we take it from revisionist history, which, you probably know what this is. I apologize for being redundant for people
That's
out there,
okay.
maybe, but yeah. So revisionist history is just when you look back on an event and you rewrite the outcome or you write the series of events, right, to suit your needs.
Hmm. Hmm.
People in power do it all the time, right? The victor gets to write the history. So we do this neuro revisionist history, which we say, hey, let's take a previous experience. We'll use I don't know, a cross country runner because we just finished cross country season and those. And they say, all right, let's talk about that previous race where you froze up and you shut down in the second mile or so, right? And you knew you had more in you. We're going to walk back to that race. I want you to imagine it and remember it the way that it was.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go back step by step in all the areas where you wanted to do something different. We're going to visualize you doing that different thing and becoming successful. Now we're not going to sugarcoat it. I want you to remember the pain. I want you
Right.
to remember the disappointment. I want you to remember everything that came with that led you to either shut down or disengage or lose focus or throw in the towel. But this
Hmm.
time we're going to imagine you, right? Every sensation we can incorporate. I want you to hear your heartbeat. I want you to feel the wind. I want you to feel how your
Yeah.
fingertips are hot was. I want you to hear the feet, your footsteps underneath you as they hit the ground. Right? I want you to hear the crowd. I want you to recall everything you can. But this time you overcome that obstacle.
Mm.
You have a successful race and you finish the way you wanted to finish. Why is that
Wow.
important? It's important because our brain predicts our future performances based on our past experiences.
Hmm.
And since it doesn't know the difference between what is real and what we imagined, now next time you're in that situation, that next race, that next time you're in the fourth quarter of a football game and you usually gas out, right? Whatever it is, your brain's going to pull back on the previous experiences. And if you've rewritten it to where it's more favorable and you've overcome, it's going to say that's what we do in this
That's
situation.
what we do. That's what we do. I love that, Dr. Zach. Dr. Zach, what you're talking about right now, I often tell my athletes the same, a very similar thing, that I want them, whatever it is that you do, I need you to become one with it.
Mm,
And when I say become one with it, I mean your wins and your losses. So you understand what is that emotion that you're carrying, because you've taught yourself that winning carries an emotion, a specific kind of emotion. And so if we have the opportunity to rewire, reprogram ourselves, then if you've taught yourself an emotion about losing, and so when it looks like you're losing to you, like you said, your brain literally goes right to how you defined losing, and your body's going to follow that action. But if you know the emotion that you have for winning, what happens when you rewire yourself, when it said losing becomes a lesson instead of losing?
mm,
Said losing or failure, I use it this way. The word failure, at the end of it, is the word LURE. There's a lure at the end of it. Why is that important? Because a lure means that you are either going in this direction or you're going to go in this direction. So with failure, I tell people, failure can lure you either away from where you want to go or lure you towards where it is you need to go. But your decision is what's going to decide how you think about what you're experiencing, what we're talking about right now, how you neurologically process failing. And most people, that's the struggle, right? I
yeah.
failed. When I rewired myself and said failure has a lure, whenever I go through hard things, I know I got a decision. I don't know about nobody else.
Are you going to take the bait or not?
Right. Am I
Right?
which way do I want to go with this?
Mm,
Right. And I choose to believe, like you said. Let's go back to what you said, the scripture. Ask,
that's,
what are you going to ask from this place?
mm,
What are you going to seek in this place? What action are you going to take? Where are you knocking at? Because whatever you ask, seek, or knock at is what you're going to have.
yep. And the more times you ask, seek, and knock for something, the easier it is to choose that response again, right?
Yes,
And that's
yes.
habit change, right? So it's like we're feeding, you're gonna feed one or the other. And that's why it's so important to be aware of these concepts is that neuroplasticity, which we're talking about every time we do something and it gets easier, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing,
Yeah.
right? When you first do something, right? When you look at somebody who you start looking at them and they go down a path, you're like, gosh, how could they end up there? How could they make those decisions? I would never do that. Well, of course, we'd never do that because we haven't done it, but they probably thought they would never do that as well. But what
Right.
happened is they did something and they felt the guilt, they felt everything that comes along with that, they felt the fear, they felt everything. But then when they did it again, it got a little easier, and they did it again, it got a little easier,
Hmm.
and they did it again, it got easier.
It got easier.
Right?
Right.
Because those neurons would wire, hey, I guess this
You
is
were
what we do.
wired your brain. This is who we
Yep.
are. This is what we do.
So if you yeah, so if you're not aware that it's happening no matter what, so
Mm.
are you aware of that failure? What are you gonna do? Because it's gonna wire one way or the other. And if people who aren't aware of this but still end up being successful, it's kind of a flip of the coin. They just happen to lean that way, or somebody
Right.
helped guide them there, right?
Mm.
Versus the people who give in to failure, and you see that every time times get hard, they shut down, there's always an excuse, right? Because that's been their experience. Every time they repeat that experience in that situation, their brain gets easier and easier for them to do. So how do we rewrite that? And that's what we talk a lot about with neuroplasticity. The beautiful thing about it is whatever has been wired can be rewired.
Right, right.
So if you've been wired to respond to failure in a way and taking you away in the direction you don't want to go, let's identify that. Now we got to make sure now discomfort and failure is going to be your friend, because when you face that failure, now it can lure you in the right direction. Now
That's it.
you have the
That's it.
opportunity to rewire. You have
The
the opportunity to
opportunity is
choose.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the more you do that, it's going to feel weird at first because our brain hates change. And any change we try to make feels weird, right? There's a reason why New Year's resolutions don't last very long. But every time you do it, it's going to get a little easier and a little easier. And the more you do that, you replace that other program that's taking the wrong direction. We don't need that anymore. It's like replacing an operating system on your phone. You update it to new one, don't use it anymore, get rid of it. And now that becomes what you do. You are someone who stands in the face of failure, right? Who
Mm.
learns from it, who doesn't let them take them down, and says, hey, you know what? I'm going to let it, like you said, lure me in path of growth.
Dr. Z, what you're saying is why my program that I run for athletes, why it's so important, and I call it rooted,
Mm.
because that rooted part is so important. When you understand the roots of a tree determine how the tree grows.
Yep.
If the roots come out of the ground, the tree dies. But the deeper the roots go into the ground, the stronger the tree is. And so a lot of people don't recognize that they have roots in things and behaviors and thoughts and patterns,
Love that.
right?
Yep.
And so the neural pathway that's built in their mind, they travel on the highway, and it's all you're embedding those roots in those decisions, right? And the moment, and that's what I tell people. So that the good thing is breakthrough can happen at any moment for you. Yes, you've done it this way for so long, but that means that you get to escort breakthrough to the front of the line of your life. How do I
Mm.
do that? How do I do that, Tarico? You talk to a Dr. Zach or Tarico, or you literally seriously find the people. I did a study on this, so this will tell you how much of a nerd I was with this psychology stuff. I did a study on my own on snakes,
Yeah. Okay.
and this was from prayer. This is from prayer that the Lord told me one day, study snakes, and I said, okay. So I studied snakes, and I start asking questions. So what happens when a person gets bit by a venomous snake, right? And what I studied and learned was when a person is bitten by a venomous snake, that they take literally the antibodies from the same venom and they create the vaccine actually to heal you. And I'm
Mm.
sitting here like, wait a minute. I said, wait, this is this is neuro. I'm like, this is neuroscience too in snakes, because they
Yeah.
take this same thing and it like remembers the venom. I remember you, and I'm gonna put something new in here with it, and I'm about to change your makeup in the body. And I'm sitting here like, whoa, this is crazy, because it speaks to how we talk about wiring and how you can rewire. We've been watching things be rewired in science for a long time. We didn't know
We
kind
didn't
of
know it.
that's what we were doing, right? When you're cutting things open in the lab and you're in there playing with these dissections, what are you doing? Well, they tell you can cut this part out and we're going to replace this and put this new part in there and we're going to sew that back in, and now we're going to sew him back up and watch what happens. Boom, 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 boom. So, and now, and as a kid, you look at it, so I thought, wait a minute, it was dead. I'm like, no, it just didn't have the it didn't have the right wiring. The heart wasn't functioning. There was a clog there, which is what happens in the brain, right?
We get mentally clogged. Yeah. And we just got rewired. Yeah. No. No, absolutely. It's so much that goes, and that's and that's one of the reasons why, again, I got into it, is that hey, we got to apply these neuroscience principles, right? And there's, you know, one of the things I love about it is it makes it tangible.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So when we're talking about things, we're talking about like how we can rewire, and and I love using examples. Like I'm probably going to steal the snake venom example. I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, it's yours, doc. It's
To
yours.
bring it
My
to,
honor.
I'll credit you with it. Make sure we're excited. Um, but when we do those things, right, we're trying to make it so people can understand. And what happens is, I think when we use the brain and neuroscience, we pull it out of that world of abstraction where things are just kind of abstract, and people are,
Yeah,
some people are naturally drawn to that. But what I find, and I learned this working with veterans at a VA where I did residency in Pennsylvania a long time ago. But there's certain populations who just don't cling on to that kind of stuff, and I've noticed it with some athletes too.
yeah, absolutely.
Is things have to be more objective, more tangible. A lot of it depends on your background and everything else. So whenever say, like, if they go see somebody, it's like, yeah, they wanted me to breathe, but what's breathing gonna do? They want me to do this and that, right? But whenever say, like, hey, look, here's your brain, right? Now you should have a model. This is I'm not sure if it'll show up on screen, but
I
this is
see
my
it. Yeah.
brain model I use. So I called him NOS. So NOS, GNOS, which means, intelligence, knowledge, right? And then NOS because one of the best lyricists of all times, right? So my boy NOS.
I
Um,
love it.
and so whenever we pull it out, it's like, hey, look, but this brain is pretty comparable to what yours looks like, right?
Yeah.
Now, when you start to get anxious or you get worked up in a high pressure situation, this part of your brain up here, this front part, starts to shut down. Why is that important? Because you need that part to stay focused, to stay in the zone, to stay in that flow state,
Hmm.
to make the best decisions on the court, on the field, on the track. You need parts of that brain also to run automatically so your coordination, your technique is on point.
Hmm.
But when we let the deeper parts of our brain, that amygdala, are more just kind of in the middle and central way down in here, when
Hmm.
they start to take over, they drain the resources from that frontal part.
That's the prefrontal cortex, right?
Yeah, from the cortex. And so now you're operating, like you said something earlier, you're operating out of fear, not
Yeah.
faith. And
Right.
when you operate out of fear, you're focused on all the don'ts. Don't mess
Right.
up. Don't screw
Mm.
this up. Don't fail. Don't throw this
Right.
interception. And
Right.
once you're doing that and you're in fear mode, operating out of that, when we're working on all the don'ts, we aren't able to pay attention to the do's, the front lobe
Dues.
do. Right?
Right.
And so we
Right.
move from pursuing success to avoiding failure. And so we play not to lose instead of playing to win. But when you can do that, make it tangible, like, hey, that's fine now, but now you know what's going on, but now you have control over it because it's not a character issue, right?
Right. Mm.
It's just a normal your brain is doing what it's designed to do, which is protect you. It sees a threat of failure, sees a threat of discomfort, sees a threat of your identity, right? Of vulnerability. And it says, hey, let me shut you down. And I call it the brain governor. Brain governor is something that shuts us down without us realizing it and keeps us from reaching our true potential. It does that
Mm.
out of fear. It's kind of like a governor in a car. So cars will have a car engine governor. It's like your car speedometer may say it goes 160, but you get up, I don't recommend doing this. We get up to about 100, 110, it shuts down. Not because it's not capable of going that fast, but that
Right.
governor will shut you down to keep you safe. That's what your brain's trying to do.
That's you.
And so when you're able to say, like, look, here's all this happening, your brain governor's kicking in, you're operating out of fear. That's not your coward or anything. That's just
Huh?
naturally your brain does what it does, but we can retrain your brain. Right?
Mm.
And now people see it's like, oh, it's tangible. It's like a performance metric. Athletes love performance metrics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Right.
can retrain your brain. So
It's a
I know I kind of went
beautiful.
off on a tangent there, but
No, that's not a tangent. That's a truth, right? It takes me back to, because I love how these explanations tie into biblical principles, and what it brings up for me is the garden. It brings up the garden. And in the garden, there was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I love teaching this. This is one of my methods that I use in my practice. Is I call it the tree of life method, which is literally talking about that there is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and then there is all the other trees, which is the tree of life. The only issue with the two trees is this: one is a divisive tree, and one is a
okay.
singular tree. So when the Bible said, the day that you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the day that you eat of it, you will surely die, is what it says. And
Yeah.
then there's a scripture that says, a house divided against itself cannot
Cannot
stand.
stand.
So what we see there is this opportunity. Well, if I only eat from the tree of life, then I'll only produce life.
Mm.
If I eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, then that's going to leave me in a place where, the Bible, the scripture that says, I'm not the author of confusion, where I'm always living in this very dichotomous place
Yeah.
versus living in the consistency of asking, seeking, and knocking on life thoughts and ideas, right? Ideas that are the faith that is the substance of what I'm hoping for, the evidence of things that I don't see, right? That's the tree of life. And when you chew consistently, I tell people, what does this mean? It means that all opinions must die.
Mm.
And people are like, wait a minute, what do you mean all opinions must die? Because if I choose to walk an optional life versus an intentional one, then I'm actually working against my own outcome.
Yes.
I'm literally distorting my own view. If I'm telling myself, I tell people, you never go into a store looking for what you don't like.
Mm.
When do you ever go into a gas station looking for a drink that you
Something you
don't
don't
want?
want. Yeah.
You don't. You go
Mm-mm.
in and you look for, we're so good about in certain areas where we give life to this. You have a thought, you're driving, I want coffee. You pull over, you go into there, and if it's specific, I want a French vanilla cappuccino. You go into that gas station, you thought it driving, you go into that gas station, you look for that French vanilla cappuccino. If they have it,
Fine.
great. If they don't, I gotta go somewhere else. What why
Man,
why do you
I
go
love
somewhere
that
else?
analogy. Yes,
Because
I
the
love.
tree of life says I gotta produce it.
Mm-hmm.
I have to produce it. And so that's why the Bible says, eat from the tree of life, which simply means you can rewire your brain literally at any point. All you got to do is quit eating from the optional tree.
The opposite tree. What are you feeding? Right? Where are you eating from? Right? We all got to
Yeah.
eat, but where are you eating from?
Where you eating from?
Yeah.
So
Because
I
one, it's like our health, man. If you're eating right, especially as athletes know this, and you're fueling yourself correctly with through nutrition, man, you're gonna perform, right? But
right,
if you're fueling yourself with junk and or not fueling yourself accordingly, right? Then you're not performing, you'll be inconsistent. You're not living with that intention, that purpose. Um, hey, I know I don't want to cut you off, but I love that. I love that analogy of you go into the store and you're not getting distracted by looking at all the things that you don't want.
don't want. You
You're
don't look
pursuing. And
for 'em.
so when you're doing that, when you're going to look, you're going success mode. You're in that intention mode. You're in that life mode of I'm going to look for what I want, that win. I'm going to look for what right? It's the same thing when we start to perform or compete out of fear or from failure, whatever. It's all we're doing is looking at the stuff we don't want. So
Right.
how are we supposed to see what we do
Exactly.
want?
Exactly. That's why I tell people you're actually not chasing success. A lot of people think they're in pursuit of success, but actually what's happened is you've lost purpose.
Mm,
My mentor
expand
taught
upon
me
that,
this.
man.
I'm serious. My mentor taught me where purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable.
Oh,
So if you don't know the purpose of a thing, you'll abuse the thing. So a lot of people, what we're talking about in neuroplasticity in this, a lot of people don't know the purpose of the brain. And so if you don't know the purpose of the brain, then you'll abuse the brain with what you say. You'll abuse the brain with what you see. You'll abuse the brain with what you hear. You'll abuse the brain with what you do. Why?
mhm.
Because you don't know the purpose of it. But once you have an understanding, once you come into conversation with a Dr. Zach, right? Once you come to our facility, once you come and see us and spend time, now I can train your brain how to reign, right? I can train
Man,
your I could train your brain. I could teach you what this means and why this is happening. And what is the famous for Eureka, which
Eureka.
is hey,
There you
the light is on.
go. Aha.
The light has gone.
God, man. Hey, and don't. Oh, man. I tell you what. People sometimes will ask what my favorite thing about what I do is. Also teach. I'm a professor. I do adjunct professor at undergrad and graduate level, but and the coaching stuff. And we're like, what do you love about it? And one of many things I love about it are those aha moments,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
When you see it in an athlete, or if I see it in the corporate world, or whatever, or, wherever it is, but when that light turns on
yeah, man.
and they have that aha moment of I can do what?
Yes,
Like,
yes,
I'm capable of this, right? And you see that switch not just in their performance, but in their confidence. Like just that aha moment. That's one of the best things and the most
no,
gratifying things in the world, man.
nothing
Um,
like it, man. One of the athletes I was working with, man, I love telling this story. Like, he had an aha moment. And the aha moment was I used a scripture that said, I told him, I said, the scripture says, forgetting those things that are behind you and pressing toward the mark of a higher calling. And he said, wait a minute, say that again, say that again. I said, it says, forget those things which are behind you and press toward the mark of a higher calling. Now, why is this relevant to him? Because he is a long jump. And I told him, I said, so that last step off the board, are you focused on where you're going, or are you
yeah.
focused on where you've been, where you came from? And then I said to him, controllables and uncontrollable. You can control your focus, you can control your foot hitting that board that last time, but who's controlling you in the air? And I said, so you hit a different realm, right? And I said, is that realm, that dimension where you hit the air, is depending on how your foot hit the ground,
Bored.
the board, and left the board, which tells your brain is already saying, accelerate. And I said, imagine if you forget what behind you, but now you know I'm hitting this different realm of pressing toward the mark. I said, so you're trying to hit a mark, and he's telling you to press toward the mark of where? And he said, the higher calling. I said, when you hit that board, is that what you're thinking? And he was like, nah. He's like, I'm thinking about my form, and I'm thinking about if I hit it right, and is this a good jump? And I said, so you actually not even focused on the higher mark. I said, you focused on the form. Isn't that
Yeah.
behind you? I said, is that not behind you when you hit the board and you've left it? And he was like, oh my gosh. He
God,
said, oh
man.
my gosh. He said, no, tell me that again so I can write it down. And he was like, I never thought about that I'm carrying this in the air with me. I
Yeah. And
said,
it is impeding you, man.
it's
Right? Oh,
impeding you. It's a
yeah.
weight.
There- Man, there's two things I want to say about this. There's two things I want to say about this. One is I love that, forgetting what's behind you, pay attention to what's in front, right? So when we talk about how we build confidence and we talk about how we use language from a neuroscience
Mhm.
standpoint, how our language can rewire our brain, which then rewires, how we react and what we do and, our identity become is, yeah, I just wrote an article about this on for a LinkedIn news. I have a LinkedIn newsletter called Behind the Brain and explores the neuroscience of sports, business, and life, right? And how it applies and strategies and what have you for performance improvement. But we're talking about the avoidance motivation and how when we operate out of fear instead of out
Mhm.
of, so avoidance motivation is basically we are wired to avoid things that are
Fully.
undesirable or potentially uncomfortable, even if the thing that we should be pursuing has a high probability of success, even if it's rewarding. Right? We
Okay.
kind of operate out of fear. But anyways, one of the things we say like to change that and then to help build confidence and resilience is, and I think about this long jumper is using instead of using don't language, using directional language. Right?
That's it. That's
So
it.
yeah,
Press
so instead
toward.
of yeah, and so it's press forward. So let's say he hits the board and he scratches, right? Or and it throws him off. It's like, hey, you know what? We'll say like things like we'll tell people like, hey, have a short attention span, focus on the next one. But we very rarely tell them how to do that.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we say instead of what went wrong, hey, don't miss your mark. Right? Instead we say, hey, what's the next win in action?
Right.
What's the
Mm.
next thing we can do that's gonna get you towards your success? What's the next thing we can do that's gonna get you back on track?
Breakthrough.
Now we're thinking about the future. We're not stuck in the
Mm-hmm.
past.
Mm-hmm.
Where we tend to ruminate,
Mm.
right? And get bogged
Mm.
down on our errors and mistakes. It freezes up. That's how we get our focus back. That's how we have a short attention span and memory after a mistake. And so I love that, being able to look forward, like, what's the next win in action? And that signals to your brain, let that go. Quit operating fear. Open up that part of your brain in front that says, hey, what do we need to do to problem solve here? Do I need to adjust my steps? Do I need to do whatever? Right? And
Mm-hmm.
then get back in focus. The second thing I want to talk about is what you're describing when he's in the air and he's thinking about all those things like, was that a good jump? Am I going to land far? Am I doing well? Whatever, all the examples you gave. He's operating in what we call the default mode network. Default mode network is kind of, some people would say it's the daydreaming mode of your brain, but it's when we kind of get caught up in self-reflection and evaluation. And it's
Right.
good for us when we need to grow and those kind of things. But in the heat of competition, we
It's
don't need to
not
be focused on those things
right. We don't need to
because
be
it gets us
looking
stuck.
back. Forget that which is behind you. Right. Reflecting.
Exactly.
No, no, no.
No, we need to be in task positive network, and task positive means that's when we're focused and locked in, and we're not thinking about those things. We shouldn't have to because we've practiced them so much that they should be automatic behaviors, automatic motor movements. That jump should be
Wow.
automatic.
Wow.
And when we get stuck in that, it throws off our brain and it throws off our timing, it throws off our coordination, and that's when we start to overthink, and that's when we have bad jump after bad jump after bad jump.
Dr. Zach, oh my
Yeah,
gosh. You just
you know,
gave me a picture, man, of driving, of when we're
yeah,
driving, and the sun catches your mirror in the right place, and the reflection of the sun hits your eyes. Now, the
yeah,
sun is a great thing, and we
sure.
love it. But when it catch your eyes in that mirror in the wrong angle, it blinds you, and you can't see forward. So when you
Right.
said that, I was like, whoa, reflection can be a blinder if it
Oh,
catches you in the wrong space.
in the wrong space. Man, I love that. God, Tricky, I'm gonna steal so much of your stuff, man.
We gotta,
Like,
hey,
I never
we
thought
gotta
about it in
work
that
together.
manner. I know. Good night, man. Like that's so true. That's such a perfect example of, reflection could be a blinder, right? Wrong time. God, I love it.
It's
And it is. I mean, you think about. I read this study a couple years ago, and it's actually a dissertation I found of somebody, and I think it's since been published in peer-reviewed literature. But uh, it's talking about some of these issues, and it says, he says, you know what? If you, the author said, if you ask somebody who's had a great performance. Think of a major league pitcher and they just threw a no hitter, right? Threw a no, right?
Mhm.
And when they get interviewed after the game, and people often ask, like, hey, as you got to the sixth, seventh, eighth inning, and you knew you were approaching a no hitter, what were you thinking? Like,
Mm.
what were you doing? What was going through your mind? How are we keeping calm? Like, 9 times out of 10, you know what the response is?
What is it?
Nothing. Wasn't thinking about anything. They were in task positive network. They were in focus mode. They were in flow mode. They were in go mode.
Locked in.
They were locked in. Because once they start
Mm.
thinking, I got 2 more
That's
innings,
when.
I got to get 6 more outs. All right, what am I going to throw? It takes them out of the game. And now the parts of their body that are supposed to move automatically, their wind up, their pitch, their release, right? The finger placement, all the things that are supposed to happen automatically.
Right.
Our brain comes in line and tries to micromanage those movements and makes them feel awkward. Throws off our coordination, throws off our movements. So
Dr.
it's the same
Zach. Oh
effect
my
as, have
gosh.
you ever been with somebody and you're talking about, like, and somebody walks and says, oh no, hey, act casual, act
Hmm.
the least looking,
Right. You awkward.
yeah, right? And all of a sudden, it's like you forget how to walk. Wait, where'd my hands go? How do my arms swing?
Right.
Brain starts to micromanage. That's the same thing. So your jumper was, thinking himself out of great performances, not because he lacked the ability,
Right. 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 It's
but
just
because
out of focus. You're
mhm,
blinded.
He was blinded by the reflection. Yeah.
Listen, when you said that again, and Dr. Zach, you're seeing in real time kind of what happens in me, kind of with why I focus on spiritual development in athletics.
Mhm.
Because when you said that, what I saw was the scripture that says the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way. Not, this is so good because what you're saying is be focused on the step.
Yes.
Don't be focused on where you were. Don't be focused on where you're going. What does the Bible say? Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough worries for itself,
Stuff. Yeah.
right? Don't worry
Just
about
let me
that.
take care of the birds in the air.
I'm a very present help in your time of trouble. I tell people that is a scripture that a lot of people, and I always say this to athletes, I say, listen, if anything, why don't you allow yourself and gift yourself that you have helped when you're present?
Yes. God, Isaiah 41:10. Right. Do not fear, for I am with you.
Come on,
Right.
man.
They just, I'm right here with you. You are protected. Just focus on the step.
I'm in it. I'm in it. Yea, though you walk through the valley of the shadow of
Valley of the
death,
shadow of
I
death.
will fear no
Will
evil
fear no
because
evil.
you are with me.
Mm,
So, oh man, it just what I'm hearing us say is that this congruence, right? This congruence, and I'm going to use a term that's being used in the NIL space right now. It's a
man.
congruence with with your collective, right, presence. Like I'm going to have all of me. Now let me go to John Legend. I'll use his song. All of me loves all of you,
All of you.
right? I'm serious. Like I'm present in all of me is in love with the moment,
Mm,
not the outcome. I tell my athletes all the time, if you stay focused on the outcome, then you forego the process. You'll compromise your process.
man, absolutely.
Don't just focus on your outcome and dismiss the step, because a lot of people praise the future and they forget
Mm,
about the decision in the now,
the moment.
right? In the moment. And we don't understand. I say this, moments create momentum, and momentum creates your destiny. But you can't get to momentum without a moment. If you
Oh,
if you if you quit looking for your moment, this is the day. The Bible says this is the day the Lord has made. I
man.
will rejoice and be glad in it. Not in many days, in it today. And so now I'm wiring my brain that today is the day that I get to enjoy. So guess what you teach yourself tomorrow when you get up? This is the day.
This is the day. Yeah.
I get to enjoy it. So I
I
tell
love it,
people you
man.
need to put that up everywhere. This is the day. This is the
This
day
is
of
the
enjoyment.
gosh. I love that. You have to have these moments before you get momentum. Right.
Yes, you have to,
People
Dr.
skip over
Zach.
that process. This is the day. Like it's oh, going like all right, so we'll talk about you said when people focus on the outcome too much, right?
Yeah.
And it throws
Hmm.
them off, right? As soon as, like you said, as soon as you let go of that process and start thinking on an outcome, you start operating out of fear.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like you remember when we were kids. I don't know if you used to play tag or whatever. Um,
Come on. You know, we always running
yeah.
around the
Oh,
neighborhood, hiding
yeah,
behind
man. Yeah.
cars and trees and
Until the porch light
buildings.
came on, you know,
Yes,
they expect you to
absolutely.
see it at first. You know, then
Yeah,
your mom was
yeah.
calling, you knew you were in trouble. Um, but when you were playing tag, you could have been the fastest kid in the neighborhood. But when you started worrying about who was chasing you and starting to look back, right, instead of worrying of just running, what happened? All of a sudden, it felt like you couldn't run. They would
You
catch you,
couldn't.
right?
Yeah.
Wow.
You know you about to get caught. That's what you start telling.
You about to get caught.
They gonna catch me.
Uh, And you start to panic and start to arch your back and think,
Yep.
well, it's the same thing. You start to panic because you know you're gonna get
Mm.
caught. You're gonna get caught up if you're focused on that outcome, right? So you're not gonna run as fast. You're not gonna do those things. But the way I tell athletes, especially faith-based athletes, is look, you've been given your purpose.
Yeah.
You've
Come
been
on.
given your gift.
Yeah.
The gift the Lord gave you is what brought you here today.
That's
Your
right.
responsibility isn't to be evaluated. Like you said, let go of the opinions, right?
That's
There is no
good.
scoreboard.
Say that again, Doc.
Your responsibility is not to be evaluated, right? You already know your work. Like, there's no scoreboard. You don't have to worry about that.
That's
Your
good.
responsibility is to use your gift and be a good steward of your gift.
Oh man, I
Being a good
love that.
steward of your gift is following through a process and focus on the here and now, what you're doing. If you just focus on being a good steward of your gift, the outcome will be there.
That's right. That's right.
PRs
I
will be
love
there. The
that.
medals will be there. Because your identity is not tied up on if you win or lose.
No,
Your identity
no.
isn't tied up on if you PR or not, if that person beats you or not, or whatever. Your identity isn't tied up in evaluation. Your identity is already tied up in, like we said, the image and likeness of Christ, the
Image
gospel.
and likeness of Christ.
So, like,
Mm,
when your identity is solid, you don't have to worry about the outcome. You just have to worry about in the moment being a good steward of your gift. Focus on the process and in the
Dr.
fearlessness,
Zach. Oh my
and you
goodness,
perform.
man.
You don't get caught and tagged.
The reflection don't blind you.
The reflection don't blind you, man. The reflection don't blind you.
Dr. Zach, let me just say, man, I this is well beyond. I just want you to know, this is well beyond what I even thought for real that this conversation would go like. And I am so grateful and thankful for that people get to get this expertise from you, and this wisdom that the Lord provides, and you saying yes, not just to this, because it was the yes that you said way back then to this is the purpose for my life, right? This is just the fruit. I always tell people like this is a harvest from a decision. So what you see, we see as expertise, this is a harvest of a whole bunch of compounded interest.
Yes. There's a lot of
and that-
seeds that were planted.
yeah, man. And thank you for being willing to come plant seeds. I wanna pivot real quick, man, and ask you this question. And this is kind of just with something I'm seeing happen right now in the sports world. So many teams are experiencing loss right now. And I mean, from suicide to coaches leaving their programs. And could you speak to how athletes can rewire when they're experiencing the turmoil as they experience a loss, whether that's a teammate or whether that's a coach leaving them? How do they rewire from that abandonment place?
Man, that's a great question. And there's a lot of complexity goes into that. But I think the first thing is they have to acknowledge it, man.
Mm,
You have to acknowledge and label what it is that's going on, right?
that's good.
Because one of the great things about sports that I love is that the lessons that you learn translate so well to life, whether you realize it or not. You'll be doing things as a father, as a mother, as a spouse, as a partner, as an employee, employer, as a brother, sister, whatever it is. You'll be doing things differently and better and handle things differently, especially the things when you're going through trials and tribulations because of the lessons you learned in sports, assuming you're able to take in those lessons.
Right.
And the first part of that when it comes to loss is acknowledging that loss,
Yeah.
not avoiding it, not ignoring it, not writing it off like it's not a big deal. We'll get another coach, right?
Right.
I didn't perform very well.
Mm.
You know, uh, so putting it on the table, and here's why. When we don't acknowledge and label those emotions, what's going on? Again, emotions are not this abstract stuff that's just kind of off in the ether, whatever. Our emotions are going to determine what we do and what we become, right? If we don't acknowledge them, they eat at us, and they come out eventually. If we don't let them come out through words and through processing and through talking to people and acknowledging to ourselves what we're going through and what we're struggling with, we try to push it down. Whether it's because if you come where I come from, a very patriarchal society where we're men, we're stoic, we don't cry, we don't do those kind of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
You know, nothing bothers me, right? They're going to come out physically. Now, for an athlete, what does that look like? Right. Now, when they go and they're used to being fluid and loose and on point, now they're tense and their shots off, or their technique is off, or the form is off, or they're blown up in a game, or blown up when something happens that does go the way that they normally can manage because they have those emotions plaguing them, and they're not acknowledging because they got to get out. Emotion is just a Latin word for move. It just means to move. That's all emotions are. You got to
Mm,
move.
gotta
How do you
move.
move somewhere if you don't know the direction? If you're not paying attention to where you're supposed to move, how do you know where to move? You're going the wrong place. So first thing is acknowledge it. The second thing is, and this is where I love, and when I was an athlete in college, this wasn't as prevalent. And of course, I'm older, so I was in 20 something years ago, right?
Okay.
And it's gotten better. Still got a long way to go, but it's gotten better. Is the resources that are available to athletes now when it comes to mental health.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you have that resource available to you within your athletic department, within your whatever is being able to pursue that resource and not seeing it as a weakness or anything else, but seeing
Yeah.
it as a performance enhancement.
That's right. That's right.
Right? Because what happens, a coach can leave and you're going to come in, but ultimately what it comes down to is what are your capabilities?
Yeah.
But whatever it is, you're not going to be able to utilize those capabilities if you're not processing what's going on. So I think the biggest thing also is, and this is kind of maybe out left field, Rico, and this is just a society in general, is we are the most connected, but also the most lonely society.
D- yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
We're so connected through social media and everything else, but are lonely. And I think that plays a lot into it because when things hit the fan and life gets real, nothing. I don't think anything beats having that person right that you can talk to,
Nothing
right?
beats it. Nothing
Um,
beats.
so leaning on your teammates. Uh, the last thing I say, this is more neuroscience based, and then I promise to wrap it up here. And it's probably not the best answer altogether, but um, we have these things called mirror neurons, and these mirror neurons reflect what other people feel, what other people do, and they don't just reflect it. If we see somebody experiencing or handling something in a certain way, if we observe them, the same neurons, the brain cells are firing in their brain to help them do that, start to fire in our brain as if we're doing it. Starts to mimic it, starts to
Mm-hmm.
reflect
Mm-hmm.
it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you feel like you are lost because of a loss, being able to connect to somebody on the team or a different coach or whoever it is that's around you who you see how they're handling it in a healthy manner and watching them as they handle it.
Wow.
Let your mirror neurons reflect on that. And what you'll notice is naturally you'll start to adopt some of the ways that they're managing it as well in a healthy way. So if you see somebody who manages it through verbalizing what's going on, through coping skills, through going to see somebody, through being open, whatever it is, just by watching them, uniquely, with intention, you'll start to adopt those skills as well.
I love that. That's something that I used in college. That mirror neurons because when I first went to college, I didn't need to be at college, and so I didn't know how to study. But
Yeah.
I had a guy, a friend, who I watched him leave parties and go to the library, and one day I decided to follow him, and he didn't know, and I literally followed him into the library and I began to mirror his behaviors and see. I didn't know what he was doing, but I saw and would collect in my mind. So he got his backpack, he got his books, he got a highlighter, he got a pencil. He's highlighting something in his book, so that's what I started doing: showing up with a highlighter, start highlighting in the book. At first, I didn't know, but as I started to do that more, I had study patterns now, and it
Mm-hmm.
came from watching his behaviors. And once they were like, they become, I didn't know I was programming myself habits. And
Yeah.
once I
You
had the
were.
habit, I was literally wiring myself, and I started seeing good grades. And I was like, I could have been doing this all along. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't. But so I love that you share that that analogy. I mean that neuro pathway that we can create, because I think a lot of people, again, these things are not necessarily talked about enough with athletes. And when they're talked about, you actually create breakthroughs for people, which is why I wanted to have you on.
True. I appreciate you bringing me on. This has been a marvelous conversation. Really incredible words of wisdom that I'll take with me, and that I can steal a couple things from you. But it's been an honor, man, and I appreciate you reaching out and just inviting me on. Uh, I don't say that lightly. So appreciate you so much, man, and for the messages you're spreading, and for bringing in the intersection, asking tough questions, for bringing in faith and incorporating it into the mental performance and athletics that, like we said, off air, is that isn't being talked about enough. And so, man, I
Well,
appreciate everything that you're doing with the mission too.
Thank you, Dr. Zach. Do me a favor. Tell people where they can find you, how they can get in contact with you, where you're located on
Absolutely.
socials
So
and
physically, yeah. So I'm located in Brentwood, Tennessee, but socials, you can find me the best places on LinkedIn for those who are on that, if you're older like us, just look Dr. Zach, Z-A-C, Yanis, Y-A-N-I-S. Facebook is Zach.Yanis, Z-A-C.Y-A-N-I-S. You can also feel free to email. The email is neuro, N-E-U-R-O, info, I-N-F-O, at 18.net. Hey, if people still make phone calls, they can hit me up at, 615. Ooh, I don't even know my own, 553-1499. But no, seriously, LinkedIn's probably the best place, man. It has links to everything I need to go. Everything is Zach.Giannis, Instagram, everything else.
listen, Dr. Zach, man, I'm gonna have you. I'm doing a conference in 2026. We need to talk. I'm doing a
Hey,
conference called "In His Name, Image, and Likeness." So
oh,
I need to. We need to talk, and I look forward to kind of collaborating and doing a lot of things with you, man. This has been a blessing.
man, likewise.
Uh, welcome to the Rooted in Greatness family too, because now you're in the
Hey,
family.
appreciate it. I
All
appreciate it.
right,
Hey, appreciate it,
y'all,
man.
listen. If you love this, man, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow and share this content. Dr. Zach Yanis, y'all, did he blow you away? He blew me away. So I definitely want you guys to tune in. We'll have more great content coming up for you guys real soon. God bless you guys.